My name is Stephen Wilson, Assistant Director and Curator of the Abraham Lincoln Library Museum. And one of the things about Abraham Lincoln that was so fascinating was his interest in technology. This is the type of technology Abraham Lincoln was interested in. This is an Enfield rifled musket. It's the most exacting, finest weapon you could find of the period for infantry deployment. The thing about this particular firearm is it was a big advance in terms of technology compared to the pieces we used, let's say, during the War of 1812 or the Mexican War in 1848. This particular piece had an effective range of 350 yards with a full range of approximately 700 yards. Now, Lincoln didn't test fire this particular piece, any Enfields or Springfields, but he did test fire a Spencer rifle and was mightily impressed by that particular firearm, primarily because it had 7 rounds in a tube in the stock, and it was very accurate. One of the things that Lincoln saw in war was machinery, and he's always had an interest in machinery from when he was just a child. As a matter of fact, he's known as a president that has a U.S. patent on a invention of his. It's not a very practical invention, but it still was an invention. So when he saw opportunities for the Gatling gun and for the Monitor and for the rifled musket like this to somehow better the Union forces during the Civil War, he took full advantage of that. Now, when I say better the Union forces, for the most part, early on in the war, from 1861 to 1862, Union forces didn't have a very good record, particularly the Army of the Potomac. Everyone, for the most part, who could, tried to get an Enfield or tried to get a Springfield, but sometimes they had to use weapons like the smoothbore or even flintlock. Now, these weapons were horribly obsolete, but they did fire and they could kill the enemy. What's interesting about something like that is this particular piece, or any piece like it, it was estimated fired something like 200 rounds or 200 pounds before you actually hit something. That's only because the men weren't very well trained in firing rifled muskets. There are 9 separate steps to loading and firing this piece. It's a smooth, or rather a rifled musket with a black powder cartridge about the size of the end of my little finger right there. Simply biting it off, pouring it in using a ramrod and pushing it down, putting a cap on the fulminated mercury cap on the nipple underneath the hammer, and you're all set to go. Just because this thing was fairly simple to fire and maintain doesn't mean that the soldiers were very effective in using it. As a matter of fact, there's at least one occasion at Gettysburg where a soldier was so unnerved by the roar of battle, he had 17 rounds in the musket without actually firing it. Weighs about 10 pounds with a bayonet, weighs about 11 pounds. It's a very effective weapon, one of the best used during that period, and something that Abraham Lincoln saw as a technology that changed forever the face of warfare.